In lesson 2-6, we're going to be adding and subtracting unlike fractions. So we're going to have to find common denominators before we can add or subtract. So for this first example, we have 5/8 plus -3/4. So we need to get a common denominator before we can move forward. Um, so obviously, you could see, well, we need this to be an 8. So we can rewrite this as 5/8 plus negative. Multiply both sides, top and bottom, numerator and denominator by 2, so we get -6/8. And then we can rewrite it with one numerator, so we can say 5 plus -6 all over 8, and we're going to end up with -1/8, just like that. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Now, there's another way to find your least common denominator, and that method is called using the L method. So I'll show that to you, because if we get more difficult numbers, you might want to use it in the future. I'm going to put 8 and 4 kind of over here, and then we're going to do like an upside down division bar. The question is, what number goes into both 8 and 4? Well, a 4 goes into both. A 4 goes into 8 twice, and a 4 goes into 4 once. So it's kind of like you're doing long division here for both numbers. All right, now there's not a number that goes into both 1 and 2, so we're actually as far as we can get. And if I circle all these numbers, it kind of makes an L right here. And that's how I find my least common denominator. So you can kind of think of least common denominator starts with an L, and here we have an L. And if we do 4 times 2 times 1, we get 8, and that tells you what to use for a least common denominator. So that told us that, yep, we should have gone ahead and used the 8. So I know this one was pretty easy, and when they are easy, just go ahead and show your work by doing the times 2 times 2. But if they're more difficult, you might want to think about using this L method to figure out what is the LCD. All right, so for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite it because it's kind of packed in here a little bit. So I'm going to say 5/6 plus -2/3. Now we know that the 6 is going to be our common denominator, so I'm going to multiply both denominator and numerator, by 2. So that way I can get a denominator of 6. And so I'll have 5/6 plus, still be negative, 4/6. And I can rewrite that with one numerator as 5 plus -4 all over 6. And I'll have 1/6 for my answer. Okay, so that's kind of how that works out and how you can show your work and things like that. Obviously, you copy the original problem out of the book, show me what you're multiplying by to get a common denominator, and then put your numerator as one numerator over one denominator, and then solve. All right, so right here, we have some pretty big denominators. Obviously, we could sit here and list them out. We could do 96 times 2. That's 192. I know 128 is not going to go into 192, so we could just keep going up and up and up. Or we could try using the L method that I showed you before. So over here I'm going to say 96 and 128. All right, we're going to go ahead and do the L method. I know that 4 goes into both of these. 4 goes into 9 twice, and there would be 16 left over, so that would be goes into 4 more times. All right, and then the 4 goes into 12 3 times and into 8 twice. So I know that I can actually go into this with a 4 again. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. 32 divided by 4 is 8. And I know that I can actually go into this even further. I could use a 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. All right, and now I can't go any further with my 3 and my 4. So all of these numbers right here are going to be multiplied together to find my least common denominator. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 4 times 2 times 3 times 4. And I'm going to get 384 for my total answer. So I'm going to get 384 for a common denominator. All right. One thing I noticed right here is I have an uh-oh. So I can go ahead and fix that and just change it to addition. This first one will stay negative, okay, but this one can change to a positive because we had that uh-oh going on right there. Now, how do I figure out what it is that I multiply by? Is I look diagonally. So the 128, okay, I multiply by 3. And you could check that with your calculators if you want, and you could do 96 times 4. So if we multiply by 4 down here, we also have to multiply by 4 up there, so we're going to get 28. And here we multiply by 3, so I'm going to have to multiply by 3 right there. So we're going to get 45 as the numerator. Now, looking at the both of these, I know my answer is going to be positive because 45 is greater than 28. So I can write negative 28 plus 45 all over 384. All right, so if I do the 45 minus 28, I'm going to get 17, and we'll get 17 over 384. And you can go ahead and check your divisibility rules, but 17, since it's a prime number, 17 does not go into 384, so therefore it is in simplest form. Okay, so this one was a little bit trickier. Using the L method, it helps us find out what is the least common denominator a little bit quicker. Otherwise, you're just going to have to check and see, you kind of do guess and check and multiply them by 2, by 3, by 4, and hopefully you can figure out that they'll match up. All right, so adding and subtracting mixed numbers without common denominator. So again, first things first, we have to get a common denominator. So in this case, you might see that the common denominator is going to be 12, or 24. So if you can easily determine what the common denominator should be, you don't have to go through the business of using the L method. It's just a good method to use if the numbers are pretty big. So here if I multiply by 3 and times 3, and then here would be times 2 and times 2, okay? Now, if you're doing this out of the book, you'd have to copy this first part and then show me what you're multiplying by for your work, okay? So let's rewrite this as negative 4 and 3/24 plus 2 and 10/24. Okay, we haven't changed anything. We just changed how they're grouped and things like that. Okay, now next is we're going to have to subtract here because we have a negative 4. So this number is actually a greater absolute value. So it tends to get a little bit trickier. It's kind of hard to think about if we have mixed numbers. So let's go ahead and throw this into improper fractions, and we can work this out and see what we get. So let's do the 4 times 24, and then if you add the 3, we're going to actually add 96. So we're going to get 99/24, and this still is negative. And then we're adding, okay, if we times 2 times 24, we get 48. So we're going to end up with 58/24, and that is positive. So then we get negative 99 plus 58 all over 24. And if we combine those, we're going to end up with a negative 41 over 24. And I know that I can subtract 1/24 out. That's going to be my 1 whole. And we're going to have 17 left. So you're going to have 17/24 left. And we have to remember that that is negative. So there's our final answer, negative 1 and 17/24. So if you take a look at that and you're trying to figure out, well, how would I do that, without having to regroup it, you're going to have to remember that you would need to regroup everything. So we have plus 2 and 10/24. You can't do 3 minus 10, so you'd have to make this a negative 3, and then you have to make this a 27. So we negative 3 and 27/24 plus 2 and 10/24, and we know that we'd have a negative 1 left over here, and we would have 17/24 left over there. So this is that other way on how you could show the work on this type of problem. Whichever way you prefer to do it would be fine. Just make sure you're careful when you are subtracting these numerators. All right. With this one, again, we have the 6 and the 8, so if you want to go through your multiples here, I see the 24 would work pretty well. So I multiply this by 4, multiply this by 3, and then I'll go ahead and rewrite it. So negative 5 and 4 24ths plus 3 and 15 24ths. All right, again, you kind of have to look and think about, well, we can't do 4 minus 15, so we're going to need to regroup that. Change this to a negative 4, and we'll add 24, so we're going to get negative 4 and 28 24ths plus 3 and 15 24ths. All right, with the negative 4 and the 3, I'm going to be left with a negative 1, and then I would do 28 minus 15, which is going to give me 13 24ths. Okay, and that's kind of doing it the second method where we're not making it improper fractions. You could do that as well. You could do the we do 5 times 24 plus 4, make that an improper fraction. And then you do 3 times 24 plus 15, make that an improper fraction. And then we can combine numerators and then regroup it into a mixed number again, whichever way you prefer. All right, during January, Nikki watched television 2 1/4 hours the first week, 2 1/8 hours the second week, 1 3/4 hours the third week, and 1 1/2 hours the fourth week. And the question is asking how much time does she watch television? So that's why I set it up like this. We're going to add all those fractions together. Looking here, we have a 4, 8, 4, and 2 in the denominator. So let's go ahead and make all of them a denominator of 8 so they work well. So let's go ahead and do 2 and 2/8 plus 2 1/8 plus 6 1 6/8 plus 1 4/8. All right, now again, when you're adding, it's pretty simple. Just add the whole numbers. All right, 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 1 more is 6. And then we're going to do 2 plus 1 plus 6 plus 4 all over 8. All right, so let's go ahead and do 6, and 4 and 6 make 10, 11, 12, 13, 8. All right, I see that I can subtract 1 to make another whole. All right, that's a whole right there. And I would have 5 left over. So I'm going to make it 7 and 5/8. And we look up here for units, we have hours. So that means over the 4-week period, Nikki watched television for 7 5/8 hours total. All right, and that's our last example for today's lesson. Be sure to check the Moodle page for your assignment.